call the Charlottesville City Council August 4th, 2025 meeting to order. We have roll for City Council. Brian Pinkston will not be here, and I think Michael will be joining us if he's not here yet. I suspect Michael to be here. Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes, and no oppositions. This meeting will be divided into three sections. The first will be a joint session with the Charlottesville City School Board, followed by City Council closed meeting, and then we'll have our regular business meeting at 6:30. This is a joint meeting with the school board. Madam Chairperson, would you like to call roll?
Yes, go ahead and call our school board meeting, our joint work session to order, and the staff can call the roll, please. And Carrie Burns.
Here.
Ms. Boyd. Here. Mr. Maya.
Here. Here.
Here.
Ms. Perez.
Yes, thank you.
And we also need to approve our agenda of one item. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Burns with the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. I now turn the floor over to City Manager Sanders.
Good evening, Council, members of the school board, members of the public. I guess this afternoon, our planned conversation for this joint meeting is regarding school facilities, buildings specifically. This was part of an ongoing conversation that Dr. Gurley and I have been having, but in addition, I shared, I believe it was the joint meeting prior to this one, where I referenced that it was probably necessary for us to begin having some further conversation about the long-term projections on managing school facilities. So before we would go too far down that road, I thought it was important for us to figure out a way to have a joint session where we could at least just get an update as to how we look at our school buildings today. What are the conditions of those? We have team members who are responsible for managing these buildings, but ideally it'd be best for us to ensure that both bodies receive this information at the same time with as much detail as we could possibly provide for where we are today and where we project possibly being in the next few years. So this evening, Mike Goddard and James Freese are going to be walking you through that particular analysis, and I think Ms. Powell is also going to be speaking as well. And the intent for council specifically is this is a step ahead of your council retreat that is coming up on the 15th and 16th. In that retreat, we'll be prioritizing the discussion around housing, schools, and transportation. Pointing out to you, of course, that my job is always to remind you of choices that you have to make and the discipline that comes with spending the money that we have, because those resources, while they keep growing, are still limited. And ideally, what we want to make sure of is that you're as informed as possible when making these various decisions that you have to make in your respective roles. So I'll turn it over to the gentlemen and allow them to take us through what they have prepared for us this evening.
All right, thank you, Sam. Good evening, Mayor Wade, members of council, members of the school board. My name is James Freese. I am Deputy City Manager for Operations. And am I advancing this, King, or are you? I'm sure I have the control. Thank you. Okay, great. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So as City Manager Sanders mentioned, our goal for the night is to provide you all with a high-level review of the status of our school facilities. To that end, we are going to, after a brief introduction, talk about school enrollment and capacity. We're going to do a review of each of our existing school buildings and provide an update on the status of the middle school. Slide, please, Tina. So while generally speaking, our school buildings are in good condition, they are all old. So when we look at our schools, we actually think of them in the set of pairs. We call them the twins. The first of these, the vintage era, if you will, Trailblazer and Summit, represent a period of time where we were using more classical designs, so think columns and large windows. Then we have the middle era, which were represented by Sunrise and Tall Oaks, built in the 50s. These school buildings, we think of them as kind of good, solid school buildings. They do the job, they are in good condition. And then finally, from the 60s, we have Greenbrier and Jackson Via, which are our open floor plan era of schools, right? So these are marked by, obviously, the open floor plan style, but also small windows. Generally, these school buildings are more complex in their layout and have a range of other challenges associated with them. And then, other than our brand new middle school, Charlottesville High School is our newest school building in the portfolio, built for us in 1975. So our review, as we looked at the school buildings, considered three basic factors. First off was just straight up building condition. What is the condition of these buildings just as buildings alone? Generally, as I noted, we've maintained these school buildings in good condition. We complete periodic assessments and plan for their maintenance over time. The second issue we looked at was capacity relative to school enrollment. What does our school population look like going forward? And are we looking at capacity constraints that we are going to need to plan for? And then the final thing we looked at was really the ability of these school buildings as they exist today to meet modern education expectations. Basically, what are we looking for in a school building today? And how do these school buildings compare to those needs? Oh, 1 second, Keenan, almost there. So on this issue of modernizing our schools, we've been taking kind of a quick hit approach, right? Where we have about $1 million a year that we dedicate towards discrete projects that can be completed over the course of roughly one summer. One of the questions really before you tonight is whether we continue that approach or whether we look at a more holistic approach of considering school buildings as a whole, looking at the whole building and looking at improvements, doing improvements all at once, whether that's a deep renovation plus an addition, or considering redevelopment of the whole overall school building. If we were to move towards that school by school upgrades or school improvement program, our next step in this process would be to do a deeper dive into each and every school, do an assessment of what that school would need, what are those gaps between what are we looking for in a school and where that school is today, so that we can develop school by school cost estimates and then build that into a financial and construction plan that might then stretch over a 5, 10, or even 20-year period of time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Ms. Powell, who's going to talk to us about enrollment and capacity of the schools.
Thank you, James. Good evening. I'm Kim Powell. I'm the Chief Operations Officer with the City Schools. And if we can advance to the next slide. Thank you. I know this is a bit of an eye chart with a lot of numbers on it, but this is what the numbers are really important for, is enrollment and capacity. And the key takeaways when you look at all these numbers is it's really that there isn't like an imminent capacity issue with our schools. We did have a extended period of pretty brisk growth. Back around 2010, 11, 12, we were on an upward trajectory that was concerning to us, and we partnered with Weldon Cooper to figure out what was causing it. It was actually the high-rise UVA student housing that went up on West Main. As college students moved into that housing, it freed up quite a bit of single-family home stock in the city. And unexpectedly, we experienced a fairly sustained growth surge for some time. The growth we experienced during that time took a little dip during COVID, which happened with almost every public school division across the Commonwealth. But then as we came out of COVID and returned to in-person learning, our enrollment pretty much just stabilized at where it was pre-pandemic. And that's sort of where we're riding right now, with a little bit of a downward trend that we can foresee because of the reduction in birth rates. I can tell you that you hear, if you Google what's going on with birth rates in this nation, it's you can see lots of charts. I thought about bringing one into this presentation, but decided not to. But if you choose to look at such things, you'll see that that declining birth rate trend is real, and Charlottesville's not excluded from that. So what will make a difference for us, or what we as city schools know that we have to monitor carefully in the face of that birth rate trend, is what's going on with housing developments, and particularly affordable housing that would be attractive for families. That's what will change things, would change the outlook with our school capacity. When it comes to school capacity, and this is getting a little bit more into the weeds, the functional and max capacity numbers that you see there, functional capacity, and I'll apologize to the VMDO folks here in the room if I butcher this definition, but it's really where you're operating in what feels like a full school, but you have the space to react to changes. We like to say, unfortunately, the kids never show up in nice little bundles of 24 to put them in the classrooms the way you need to. So sometimes you have to add a classroom for a particular grade level or for a particular subject. And when you're operating, as you're approaching functional capacity, you're starting to run out of options to address those needs as they arise. Max capacity is getting into more of the hardcore, like fire marshal type numbers. That's a place you just don't want to be in. You're needing to typically add modular units or take some kind of action before you really get to max capacity, because it becomes extremely difficult to manage your programs in the building. You want to stay at or ideally below 80% of functional capacity to have the ability to maneuver and operate a typical school without really feeling those pinch points in a serious way. And so what the table shows you here is that the city facilities team asked us to look at Brockton out to 2030, and we've been working with a consulting firm. Wolpert helped us with the rezoning, the elementary rezoning process that we undertook this past year, because we recognize that within our 10 square miles, we have to be super mindful of where the housing developments are coming, because some of our schools really don't have room to expand. If you're in a locality that has more green space, a lot of times the typical first move is you drop modulars and then you figure it out, right? The school zone that has the most development targeted to it is the school zone where dropping modulars is absolutely not an option. And there's not even really a viable option for expansion. I wish I'd included the word viable in the closing bullet down there, because you'll see later in the deck that when it comes to Summit, the only thing we could come up with if we had to expand capacity there would be to take the little parking square in the back of the school and build a parking structure in that square with classrooms integrated, and you still wouldn't get that many classrooms. And then what that does is the entire inside of that building, all those beautiful large interior windows are suddenly looking at a parking garage. So I don't really feel like that's a viable expansion option. So there's some real hard limits at Summit. But for purposes of today's conversation, just know that capacity, we are being proactive, working with this firm that helped with the initial rezoning, because now when we do enrollment projections, we're bringing in a geolocation factor into it, so we can really keep track of what's happening where with the developments. We're in close conversation with CRHA and with Piedmont, who are the driving forces behind a lot of the development that's going to potentially have significant impacts on our enrollments. And it's just something that we have to keep tabs on, and it's not enough to keep tabs on it holistically, especially at the elementary level. We've got to do it zone by zone. But we feel the board and the whole team, I think, did a lot of great proactive work to reach out to the community, educate them about what's going on, and try to get ahead of what's already in progress or approved, but maybe not yet broken ground, so that we can not be in a reactionary position, in particular at Summit. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Mike Goddard, Deputy Director of Public Works. Been working on some of these schools projects for a long time, and so I'll present to you kind of some of the common issues and an overview of kind of a path forward. I should mention as well that VMD Architects is here tonight to give an update on the K Center project as well. So the dent's a lot to get through today, so we're going to try and move for you. A few general notes though. The last look at our facilities holistically was, as Kim mentioned, the capacity study work we did in 2016, 2017. A lot's changed since then. We had a particular lens we were. That information we gathered is still useful today, but I think it's also we have an expanded interest now. I would say that it is important to point out before I get into this, because a lot of specific information here that we're not making a specific proposal with this slide deck. We're kind of taking bits and pieces of things that we feel like might be needed, but this is meant to be the opening of the conversation. It's not supposed to give you an exact, say go and we go do exactly what's on these slides. I think it's important that I point out the Walker conversations happening, because some of what we're talking about here could be facilitated by some of the stuff that the BMDO team is going to show you with the Walker presentation. So when James says that heretofore we've been attacking these appropriateness issues with smaller interventions over the course of the summer, that's a little bit problematic, because the summer is a very short window of time. I would say that you'll see through the presentation of the different projects we've done and what we've been calling our modernization program that though it does make a part of a school nice, it is not the whole school by any stretch. So I'll jump into some of the common issues we're seeing in our schools. Bathrooms are a big concern. In a lot of cases, they're outdated. In a lot of cases, they are not up to current ADA standards, so that's an important thing. Also, there's concern about gender, who uses what restroom. In the new middle school project, we've gone with genderless restrooms, so one restroom, one person, doesn't matter your gender. We also did a project that I'll show you in a minute out at Charlottesville High School that had a similar approach. It was very successful at Charlottesville High School, nothing but positive feedback from that. So that's one approach we could look at. Flooring. Flooring's a big issue because a school's large, right? So it doesn't seem like a lot to change out some flooring, but when you got to do the entire floor in the summer, that's a challenge. So what ends up happening is these patchwork flooring projects. And then you end up with different types of floors, and it's just not the best way to tackle that. Also, carpeting in schools tends to be a disaster. So, and there's some of it out there still. Ceiling grids. The ceiling grids are functional. They're doing their job, but they're outdated. And I think when you walk into a school, it's really surprising how important the impact of your ceilings and lighting are to your perception of that space. Our ceiling grids across the school system, we're working on it, but they're not all there yet, and CHS definitely has a lot of ceiling grid that needs gone through. Lighting, our lighting is, we've been moving through making LED adjustments as we change out lighting through the schools, but again, it's something that it feels like maybe a more wholesale approach is required. And then down at the bottom, there aren't pictures for these things because it's not something you take a lot of pictures of, but our mechanical and electrical and plumbing, these are big ticket items, that we've been going through the schools trying to update the switchgear for the electrical systems. It's very costly, it's very time consuming. Our plumbing systems, some of the schools have old iron pipes underneath them, so it's not as simple as changing out a toilet if you want a toilet to work better. You have to go all the way down the line and out to the street. And those are challenging things to take care of in the summer. And mechanical systems, we want to have modern, efficient mechanical systems. In a lot of cases, we do not, simply put. We'll do the next slide, please. So I'll go school by school and kind of talk about the condition of each school. Each of these slides will be laid out similarly. In the upper left, we'll have some basic information about some projects we've completed, some projects that we need to complete. In the lower left, you'll see what was suggested by our capacity study work in 2016 and 17. Those numbers aren't picked up anywhere else in the grand scheme of things. They're just there for your information. And then some talk about suitability, what the positives and negatives of each school and its site are. So Greenbrier, built in 1962. We've done some different projects there over the years. I won't read through all of them, but we do have some major capital maintenance projects that are needed in the near future. Windows, the roof will be coming up, HVAC overhaul, generator replacement, fire alarm panel, and then flooring and sinks and bathrooms. And I think this is one where the suitability of the school, there is some room for expansion on the site. Courtyard, portion of the play space. No cafeteria. The auditorium is undersized. Do I need to be in stereo? Right. The music class space is small. There's insufficient specialist instruction space. And there's no way to add a visitor vestibule. That's something that's been a priority for the schools, to add a visitor vestibule at each of the schools. This one is nearly impossible based on how this school is laid out. Take the next slide, please. Jackson Via Elementary, you'll see some similar things here. We've done some projects over the years. We did the fourth grade modernization downstairs, which you'll see in a minute. But we have some big issues here too. The roofing, which is on schedule to be done in a couple of years. It needs an HVAC overhaul, and we need to replace building sealants. Lower left, you'll see some suggestions for how we had planned to expand the school in our last go-round. Suitability of the school, it's got a lot of land, that's good. It has 2 internal courtyards, which are very nice. It has no kitchen or cafeteria though, and natural light for the classrooms is minimal. It's got those slot windows, so each classroom has a little window about this wide, and that's what lets natural light into the classroom. I can't speak for what people were thinking back in the day, but kids are like plants, they need light. And there's no outdoor covered play space. Next slide, please. Summit Elementary, this is one of our oldest schools, but ironically I think it's one of the best. Constructed in 1930. There's been a lot of development over the years, major addition, for instance. Unfortunately, that major addition built floor plates that don't match up with the existing floor plates, so there are like half floors at the transition. Again, I don't know what they were thinking, but, and this is one that Kim mentioned, has very little space for expansion. It's in need of a roof. It's in need of electrical switchgear replacement, an HVAC overhaul, and a modernized elevator. Suitability-wise, it has large classrooms and good natural light. So this building actually has what you would hope for in a modern classroom. Good-sized classes, lots of modern natural light. That's funny because it was built 100 years ago, but what goes around, everything's cyclical, right?
Yeah.
Stately building, it's a beautiful building. So, you know, we would never suggest doing anything with this. However, the traffic parking issues in the neighborhood are tough. It is landlocked. It has very little space. As I mentioned, the different interior levels. I mean, the site conditions here are a wreck. So, you know, we would have to look very closely at what we wanted to do with this site. Next slide, please. Trailblazer Elementary, another of the old ones. And again, a beautiful and good functioning school. A lot of the same things apply here. We would like to replace the generator and the transfer switch, do an HVAC overhaul, repair and replace the wood cornices and trim. In terms of suitability, again, this one has a large auditorium, which is nice. There's a courtyard which we could use for something maybe. A nice play field. Unfortunately, it has 4 different interior levels. This is a common theme. For whatever reason, when people in the past have added on to schools, they don't care where the floors already are. They just put new floors and say, here's a staircase, which worked great when there weren't people with ADA issues. I guess that was the case in the old days. And then a lot of cut-through traffic through the site, which, you know, that is what it is. But, you know, overall a good school, good bones. Next slide, please. Sunrise Elementary, we've done some work here recently. We did a library renovation here a few years back. It had a roof replacement in 2000 and it will get another one in 2027. It had a security vestibule addition, which is good. But in the future, we've got, like I said, the roofing membrane replacement, some slate roof repairs, HVAC overhaul, you're seeing a theme here, floor covering replacements. Suitability-wise, it has a nice library, because we just did it. It has great solar orientation, which is a good thing, especially since we're trying to put solar on a lot of our schools, and all of our new roofs are solar ready. Adequate buildable land, so we could build an addition here or something else that we needed. Art room is inadequately sized, however. ISTEM room has egress concerns, so it's down in the basement, it's hard to get in and out of there. And then there's 2 isolated lower levels, so there's a lower floor level that aren't connected in the middle, they're just kind of separate out. Next slide, please. Tall Oaks, this one was known as Johnson, in case you're confused, I know I still am. This one has recently received a rooftop terrace, which is a nice addition. We just finished that one last summer. There was a library addition back in '94. It needs a roof. It needs skylights replaced. It needs, once again, a major HVAC overhaul and a generator replacement. Its suitability, trails are nearby, that's good, it's connected to the neighborhood. Outdoor learning spaces are well connected. Good amount of buildable land there, so if we wanted to do something we could. And good natural lighting. So these middle era schools tend to have decent natural lighting. The media center could use an upgrade. Outdoor play space would be useful, it's covered. Multiple classrooms are undersized. This is a specific one for this school. And then there could be some more specialist instructional space. Next slide, please. Charlottesville High School, this is a big one. Constructed in 1975, it's a very large school, very spread out. We just did, as I mentioned, the B Commons restroom modernization, very successful project, maybe a template for things we'd like to do in other schools. The electrical distribution center system was just redone. We just finished that up. The roof replacement is just now finishing up, 3rd phase, so we've all lived through 3 phases of roof replacement on CHS now. Because it's so big, everything costs a lot because everything's a square foot multiplier in construction. So when it comes to doing things like ceiling replacements, I mean, that's a long project, even if it's just that. So it has a new roof that's solar ready, great. Large library, excellent STEM lab, adequate buildable land. So this is a good site. Feel comfortable about this school generally. However, the library could be updated. There's not much natural light in a lot of the classrooms for some reason. There are some acoustical challenges, sounds traveling between classrooms, and again, the sprawling layout just makes everything, security, projects, timeline, and budget, a challenge. But we do have a lot of space here. So you probably noticed a few themes through all of that. I did want to, we've talked several times about our piecemeal approach to modernization. I want to go through what we've accomplished with that program since it was approved. First, Summit, 4th grade classrooms in 2019. we, feels like that was a different timeline, but we completed a renovation of the 4th grade wing. That was, I think, 4 classrooms is what we accomplished with $1 million. That was the first one. It was the template. At the time, we were going with classroom modernization, and we figured we'd go through all the schools and do 1 grade at a time until we'd gotten the whole school done. What we're realizing is that here, now that we've gone through all of the elementary schools, it's going to take forever to get through all those schools, and we still will never catch up. Jackson Via 4th grade classrooms. We went to the basement and took their kind of worst classrooms and made them the most modern classrooms in the school. Very successful project. The Sunrise Media Center and STEM space, so we took their library and made it modern. We added a STEM space. It's a really great, a great place to check out a book or to study science. Next slide, please. Then, based on our success there, we moved to Greenbrier and did another media center. Another very successful project. Tall Oaks, we did an outdoor terrace. So we took the roof of their gym, which was just a black EPDM roof membrane, and we added occupiable space there, modified the railings so you could access it, and the stairways, and made it a place where you could do outdoor study. And then Charlottesville High School B Commons restrooms. This is a picture of our restroom project there. We just finished this one up last year, and we're very pleased with this. I think it could be a template for a way that we could make restrooms that work for everyone in the city schools. So this slide talks about costs, and I don't want anybody, I said it before, I want to be clear, this is not a specific project that we're proposing. This is kind of taking some things out of those buckets. We took the required maintenance that you saw on each of those building slides, for instance, and put them in there. I put a number for bathroom renovations. So if we wanted to do the bathrooms in the school, there's a placeholder number, and you'll see it's a nice round number. Anytime you see a round number in construction, you should be worried about the accuracy of that number. But there's a number there, and I think it's in the ballpark. Ceiling and flooring renovations. We took square footage numbers for replacing all the ceilings and floors in the school, and likewise with lighting renovations. Some of these things have already been, penciled in as future projects. Most of them have not. But we just wanted to give you a sense of scale of what we're talking about. And the things that aren't in this package of numbers are things like natural lighting. There's not $1 in here for increasing the size of a window that only has a slot window. These are basically, we did our best to take the school that we have now and not change really anything about that school, except that everything finish-wise and impressions-wise as you walk into the school is modernized and new. So this is, you see down the bottom, $100 million. We're not talking about escalation costs, what does this cost by the time we get there? How long does it take to, get to the decision point? As James mentioned, we would want to do an in-depth study on each school and really lay out a capital program if this was something we were interested in inviting into. But I think the point here is just to say, here's a very basic approach we could take, and this is the number we came up with. Is this a conversation we want to have? So I'll close there with that. I'm always here for questions, but I also thought it was important that I give an update on one of our big projects right now. You'll notice that on all of these slides, you don't see anything about Charlottesville Middle School, and you don't see anything about the pre-K center. That's because we have active projects on those 2 sites. And because of that, the schools are perfect. Not really, but I think you'll see that we're getting pretty close here. This is an update on Charlottesville Middle School. Teachers moved in today. So this is brand new information. So status on Charlottesville Middle School, as you'll remember if you've been following along, right now we're at this moment where, we're using the new buildings. So we built new buildings, now we're gonna go back and renovate the old buildings. While we're renovating the old building, Building A, we're occupying these brand new buildings. So I encourage everybody to try and get a look because they are beautiful. This is the view from the play field, looking up towards, on the right side of the screen, the gym building, and on the left side, the classroom buildings of the new Charlottesville Middle School. Next slide, please. This is what the restrooms look like pretty much throughout Charlottesville Middle School. It's the same idea as the Charlottesville High School restrooms. One person, one restroom, doesn't matter your gender, plenty of ADA restrooms. This is a much better and easier to manage restroom facility because it has eyes from the hallway. Here's the new gym, which I think is, when I stood in it, I was like, this is the most phenomenal gym in Charlottesville. Next slide, please. This is, we're very much still in construction. This was, 3 days ago, which is ancient history, in a construction project. But these are the folks putting together the main grand stairway of the new middle school, and this little seating area, the wooden seating area on the right there, where people can gather and take their time. Next slide, please. This is a typical classroom. I didn't select based on anything besides I was walking by and I took a picture. So this is what an average classroom looks like. Very nice, good natural light, brand new furniture, brand new everything. Next slide, please. And this is the main entryway. So this is where, if you remember the old Buford, the staircase you're standing on here would have been the old staircase you would have taken down to the admin offices. This is now an enclosed space. It's the junction between the new buildings, which you see on the right of the image, and the old buildings, which are under construction on the left. So right now, all of the penetrations between that wall on the left are sealed up, and inside, people are absolutely ripping that building apart. If you go look at, there is precious little left. Steel, that's about all that's surviving this thing. But it's all in the interest of making this a great learning environment. And I think once you see it finally completed, it's going to be really something to behold. But we're happy that we're at this place where we've gotten the new building constructed and occupiable. And I don't want to say the hard work is over, but that work is over. All right. Next slide. That's it? Okay. So I guess now would be a good time for any questions about this part before we queue up DMDO to talk about our pre-K center.
Yes, I have some kind of questions and thoughts. Where I see where Greenbrier has, last year had 234 students, and next, I think, Summit is at 300. So and I know I'm not going to talk about every time when I was on council, but it was almost just the opposite a few, 10 years or so ago, and that we were, said, is enough students there to keep it open? That's how fewer students that it was there. It was like 120 or so students. It was really low. So I'm just thinking what's happening here is Greenbrier, people like Lloyd and I don't live there, but our kids are gone and we're still in the house. There's no kids there. But I guess in 10 years, it could change. And what I did is did a quick ad of the maximum capacity, and that's about 5,300. And so it looks like we have the capacity of about 1,000 students or so, Kim, something like that we could grow with. Because what I was looking at is that the numbers, and it didn't include any expansion. And but I think that we have a fair amount of capacity. We haven't seen how the new zoning was going to play out, and how anyway, I'm just kind of just thinking off the top of my head that do we think we need capacity in the school for future growth?
So I think what we're doing right now is a couple of things that people don't see. So part of the issue, and this came out during our conversation when we were rezoning. So in terms of the things that make us really successful, such as providing the interventions for students, sometimes that's happening in a closet. So it's the additional resource spaces that people are forgetting about. So yes, we have some areas where the enrollment ticks up, but it's the other things that makes the student achievement work in terms of where we provide reading intervention, math intervention. And I can tell you you can go in any school and it's happening in the hallway daily. It's happening in a book room daily. And so, yes, so do we need more room? Are there opportunities to expand? Absolutely, because those things shouldn't be happening in a book room. They shouldn't be happening in a hallway. But they absolutely do happen every single day. And when we open schools up next Wednesday, at every school, you'll see that happening. So I would say yes.
So Dr. Girl, how is this going to look, I guess, in a few years when the fifth graders come back? Is that factored in here?
Yes, so we're going to do it's going to be an even swap. So we are moving out pre-K students, and then the principals will work to reconfigure the building so that the fifth graders can come back in.
Yeah.
But again, I just want to make sure that I'm plugging that what we keep in front of us is that even once we reconfigure, even once we rezone, we still are going to have students who are receiving those additional services, what we call tier 2. Well, tier 2 happens in the classroom largely. But those tier 3 interventions are happening in hallways, closets, and things of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, I remember them taking place, 2 or 3 students in the cafeteria, different parts of the cafeteria, pulling students out. So, yeah.
Mayor Wade, if I might, just in the conversations we've been having, when we look at school population enrollment, we've looked out 5 years, and to the best of our ability in terms of projections are the best we can do, it doesn't look like we're going to see a substantial increase in school population to drive a need to do additions to schools for that reason. But as Dr. Gurley has pointed out, when we think about modernizing the school building, that's where you get into the need for breakout rooms for a variety of purposes, and the need to expand space for STEM uses, for media centers, for technology. And that's where we start to think about the need for additions in that kind of space. I think one of the things we're hoping to get from all of you tonight is your reactions to the status of the school buildings as they are today relative to these issues, particularly to that issue of modernization. And I'm going to offer something on the numbers that Mike gave. I kind of see those, and this might draw a gasp, as kind of a floor. Because that is, in some respects, what he shared is kind of the minimum interventions necessary just to bring the school buildings up to a good condition and make them look nice and attractive and inviting, all very positive things. But when you start rolling in these aspects of modernization, and the additional space we might need to accomplish that's when it really gets expensive. And that's the kind of stuff we would uncover going school by school.
Yeah, I'll get council to chime in. Natalie, you have any thoughts? You're CHA grad.
You mentioned that functional capacity 80%. You mentioned that for functional capacity is calculated at best fit is 80% or below of functional capacity. How is functional capacity calculated?
So for that, I would need to defer to the people such as the BMDO folks who are in the room. I don't know if they maybe could speak to that when they're at the podium, because we actually depended on them to set those targets.
Okay.
So I don't want them to speak.
Can I give it a shot?
There we go.
Sorry. I'm Rob Winstead. I'm the principal at Mungo, and I'll be our K-12 So,
We just need you in the microphone for the people at home.
okay.
Thanks.
So typically what we see, Virginia Department of Education has a formula essentially, and the conversation you were having about intervention spaces and things, those are non-capacity generating spaces. So the spaces that are used for the capacity calculations are only classrooms. So that's something to understand first. So we take all of the classrooms in the school and we multiply that times a student capacity factor for those classrooms. Typically it's around 25. For some spaces like pre-K, it'll be 18 because we want a higher or lower student to teacher ratio. But you run through that capacity calculation, and for the Virginia Department of Education, the max capacity assumes that every classroom is completely full all day long. Well, if you've ever worked in a school or been to a school, that is not the way schools work. So sometimes kids are sick, sometimes you can only have 20 kids in a classroom, sometimes there are 28 kids in a classroom, depending on what your school population is that year. And then of course teachers need planning time and other things throughout the day. So you don't have a 7-period day or an 8-period day where the teacher is teaching every single one of those periods. So we typically use a 0.85 utilization factor to go from max capacity to functional capacity, right? And those functional capacities change depending on what kind of program you're using. If you're using a block schedule, your utilization factor might be as low as 0.75. If you're using a 7-period day, it might be 0.85. So we use different utilization factors to adjust to what is actually realistic for operating a school. And then as Ms. Powell said, that schools need the ability to move students and teachers throughout the day to support a wide variety of programs. And so operating a school at that 80% of functional capacity or 85% is pretty optimal. And once you get beyond that, it starts feeling crowded and you start having challenges with scheduling spaces in the building and things like that. So is that helpful?
Yeah, great, thank you. I didn't know if there was like a formula or if it was custom based on the school, but it sounds like it's kind of both. Yeah, there's a little bit of flexibility for okay, thank you.
Mike?
Well, sure. Well, one question to start out of curiosity, with that total cost estimate, of $100 million, as you said, that would be over some number of years. What if the city was providing somehow like $10 million a year for facilities improvements and maintenance, just to throw a theoretical example? What, if any, limitations would you confront in terms of project management capacity or ability to find contractors, subcontractors, construction workers, or are you not seeing that as the real binding constraint?
Time is the problem. I would say that getting that work done within a summer is not possible. So we would have to have a way to stop people from being in that school for a long enough period of time that we could do the work. And when we're doing that, I would say it would make sense maybe to combine a couple of those packages into, I don't know, whatever it works out to be for an entire school to get everything it needs. I think that's the way to go. In terms of contractors, yeah, I think this is the worst world I've ever lived through in terms of finding contractors to do work. But again, it's advantageous to put the most in, because then you're getting a larger outfit coming to do the work. Things go more efficiently in that case.
If I could add in, so part of what we would be doing if we did a school-by-school modernization program, what we would look at is building out a CIP, again, 10, 15, 20-year time horizon that would build that out both in terms of a financing plan and a construction plan. So we would match that schedule over a long period of time to staffing capacity and financing capacity.
I guess just some quick initial thoughts. So it sounds like, enrollment is projected to slightly decrease or roughly remain the same since roughly 2010 enrollment ended up being about flat. Absent enrollment, there's still issues of beyond, the physical student capacity, additional resources and the spaces need there. And then maybe most important, most of the schools had major full HVAC replacements that regardless of enrollment, if that needs to happen, that's a huge project. And I think about, the General Assembly's JLARC study, which showed statewide, Virginia has a backlog of over $25 billion of school construction investments that are needed. And in their own report, they acknowledge that the state systematically underfunds school construction and they haven't fixed it. So we have to figure out in that context how we still try to move things forward. But it makes me think, I do think there's at least a possibility in the next several years, depending on election outcomes, we will finally have a state government that will significantly change school funding and also finally approving a sales tax for school construction, which did pass with bipartisan support in the legislature, but was just vetoed by the governor. In that context, I could very easily see us having $10 million plus a year for school construction. And, I'm just curious, if we assume that case, then how do we start to plan school by school how to do it and kind of triage what schools do we start at first? Because that was my first reaction. To me, it seems like that may be the best way to approach it. And I do think, hopefully, we're actually maybe a year or two away from that actually being our situation in terms of the state money available to us. So I think if that happens, we have to start to think like school by school and take on things like HVAC projects that eventually we're not going to be able to delay anymore.
Lloyd, do you have any?
Yeah, the question I had sort of follows on what Michael was asking about, and I'm just trying to figure out what it would look like if you were to do one of these large renovation projects on a particular school. Are you suggesting that we would be closing down that school for 9 months? And if so, what does anybody think would happen with those students and those teachers?
Ideally, yes. I do think we would close it down for that period of time because we're finding out that having students on an occupied construction site is a challenge. So that would be the ideal. And the solution, I think, probably has something to do with the Walker campus. And I think we'll hear a presentation about that. It'll maybe shed some light on that thought process. But I think there is a way that we could use the existing Walker campus as we develop that site as a landing pad for those schools.
Yeah, I did, I'm looking forward, I don't know if you all want to chime in as well. I mean, the numbers they're high, but it costs a lot. I mean, I think we did something similar many years ago when I was on the school board. It was like in the 70 or 80 million. It's not going to get cheaper. And these are things that we have to do. We have older schools that they cost more to maintain, but they're, particularly the older ones are really nice looking buildings. We just have to kind of figure out a way to do it with all the other needs that we have in this city. It's an old city thing. We got some old pipes and stuff. We have a lot of things that we have to do, but we just have to, figure out a way. I think that Michael mentioned it with, hopefully we'll get the tax that we can, that we can target specific projects on, and, maybe things will slow down a little bit. We'll have capacity, but anyway, we just have to work through it to see how we can do it.
Quick, something, question to add. So your question for us about what you would like us to respond to, I mean, yes, we want to make our schools better. So what are the specific kind of points of feedback that you would like?
I mean, we're looking for reactions. Looks like Sam has some thoughts on that as well. We were looking for reactions. Feedback. there's again, a couple different ways we can go here. We can continue down the path of doing this on an annual basis. What are we able to accomplish within a summer? We can take this holistic approach to each school and start looking at this as school by school basis. We also are looking for your on your reaction relative to the level of intervention at the school level that people, that y'all right now, at least based on what you know about the schools, might have an interest in pursuing. You know, should we be really just looking at bare bones, what are the needs that need to be addressed for the slide that Michael shared, or should we be looking beyond that into what do we need to do to actually modernize these school buildings?
Right,
for
how much
use?
triage do we want to do before we
Exactly.
wholeheartedly
Right.
fix it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As well as just appreciating the idea that the, how did you refer to it, Mike? The baseline is $100 million. So that's one thing, to have a reaction to the sense that it would take that. And that's not perfection. That's not all school facilities being these new spaceships that land and take care of our kids.
I mean,
Not that.
yeah, I think given the fact that the Buford project was 70, I don't think 100 is a shock to any of us. It's just, are we spending that in 3 years or are we spending that in 20 years? That's all, you know. And how much of that is coming from state
Yep.
or
That's it.
bonus?
So it's the amount that is required. It will be about the sources in which we use to take care of them. And then, of course, I always remind you that is in contrast to however many other priorities that are on the list, and how do we make them all fit.
So I guess we're not being asked to vote on anything today because
No.
this is all preliminary.
Just looking for reaction. There's more, so we're going to go ahead and shift, right?
But
And I should point out that project cost for Buford is actually 91 million.
Right.
Right.
Just to keep it in context.
Thank you. I do also want to just note something that was mentioned at the beginning, which I know we've heard before, and it's cool to see theory happen in real life, where as more dense housing was built, there was a shift from where people lived. So students were able to go into the new buildings, and then families were able to move into the neighborhoods. And as, which is kind of the whole point, that's the goal, having people right size what their housing needs are. And as Juan alluded to, there's the empty bedroom problem of neighborhoods that used to have whole families. Now the kids have moved out, and their former bedrooms are not housing kids anymore. And there's not a shift to, I'm not saying you all have to leave your family homes, but there's not that shift to right size that scenario because those spaces don't yet exist. You know, people don't have the backyard units that they can move into and then let a family live in the bigger house they used to live in, or whatever. That is all still, hopefully, things we'll see as our zoning code adjusts and we see more development and infill within our city. So all of that, like we were talking about at the beginning, the housing of it all is going to be something that we pay attention to very closely, because that will affect enrollment and enrollment patterns, and also birth rates. When there's more affordable housing, people will consider having children. That's a broader nationwide issue, but is not incorrect and will affect everybody else. But it's cool to see that actually worked. Yeah. The student housing.
I'd like to point out also the elephant in the room as far as these numbers go. These are enrollment numbers based on our current schools. When you modernize and improve a school, there are people in this community whose kids aren't enrolled in public schools. And there's a tipping point for each of those families. And when this school gets nicer, I'm not saying it's all about the buildings, but I think it's fair to say that some of it is. And when these things change, then suddenly you've got a different enrollment pattern. I'm very curious to see what happens to Charlottesville Middle School. Does everybody stay in private schools over time that currently is, or do they start to come back when they see this great new school building? I don't know.
So I wanted, the school board to chime in before we get the presentation.
There we go. I think actually we can have Ambio's presentation, and then it would be helpful for us to be able to respond holistically.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I would just very briefly say, just my reactions, I feel like it would make sense to begin to prepare a plan for modernizing each individual school, and then plan that thinking about it being operationalized when and if the state makes substantially more money available. The sales tax alone, I think, would be around $10 million annually just for school construction. But I do think it makes sense to start planning for modernization of each individual school, and looking through it, every single school required a major HVAC replacement. There's really not a choice when I see that, besides moving beyond just doing things over the summer.
Can we add in when you get a pilot from UVA also?
Yes, but I'm more optimistic we'll get the money from the state before UVA, but
All right, I'm going to hand this over to Maria Beninsky. She'll introduce herself, but she's an architect at VMDO, and she's been shepherding us through our planning process for the Walker campus in the the pre-K.
Right.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Mike said, I'm Maria. I've been working at VMDO a very long time and with the Charlottesville City Schools for coming up on a decade, I think, here, which is pretty wild. The past, I guess, maybe 4 months or so, we've been asked to look at the Walker campus, and kind of a dual track study here. We've been looking at the Early Learning Center, which will house the preschool classrooms for Charlottesville City Schools, very exciting. And at the same time, we were asked to look at a master plan for the campus. Over the past 6 months or so, the visioning happening within the city schools and public works for this site has really been developing, and some needs have been identified that potentially could be served on this site. So the ask for us was to come back at our Early Learning Center design that we had worked on in 2021, 2022 during the reconfiguration planning, and adjust it as needed to test out, can we fit that Early Learning Center plus a number of additional uses that I'll get into in this presentation. Next, I guess, unless I can advance. You're advancing, okay. Walker campus, of course, located at the north end of town, right by the bypass, not far from Charlottesville High School. Next. Here's a site aerial. Rose Hill Drive tees into this site at the south. Gentry Lane runs along its west edge, and along its east edge is Busy Road, known as the 250 bypass. And McIntyre Park is just across the bypass from this site. Next. So here are the uses that we were asked to look at fitting into the Walker site. Some are on site already, and some are new ideas to bring to the site. Next, I'm going to go through them one by one with you. Central office. So currently there is, of course, a central division office at the north end of the site. Central office does have an issue, though, where they actually can only fit about half of their staff within this office building. So the other half are in the lower level of Charlottesville High School. A challenge, of course, for operations. And there's a desire to one day be able to bring all the staff together so they could be in one building, and also to free up that space within Charlottesville High School so it can be dedicated to academic use. Next. Pro pool. This is an existing facility in the southeast corner of the site. There's in addition to the pool itself, there's some recreational spaces. It's used for some after-school programming at times over the years. And it's an existing Parks and Rec asset. I think there's visioning ongoing about what the future of it should be, but it is serving the community at this time, and over time has been used occasionally by students on the Walker campus, and that could continue to be the case into the future. Next. The Early Learning Center. That's going to be a lot of the focus of what I talked to you about this evening. And we're looking at a new purpose-built home for Charlottesville's youngest learners. This is a really big deal. This is bringing all the preschool staff, leadership, and resources, which they've been spread across the 6 neighborhood elementaries to date, into one building that's purpose-built for young learners whose needs and academic patterns are very different from elementary schoolers, middle schoolers, etc. So very exciting new project. Next. Okay, Lugo McGinnis Academy. This is Charlottesville City Schools' alternative high school program. It's currently at about the scale of 30 students and has been oversubscribed for a very long time. There have been waiting lists, and there hadn't really been a hope that it could expand to meet the need of those waiting lists. They're working on developing a night school that still isn't going to take care of everyone on the waiting list. So when people started to brainstorm about this site, the existence of the gym here really opens up the possibility for Lugo McGinnis to be located here because they need a gymnasium, and there's other existing space on the site that they could use, existing buildings without a slated use in the future. So this was something that really prompted the request to us to kind of re-envision how could the site be used. And not only the existing facilities, which are assets that could be used by Lugo McGinnis with the light renovation, there's also the location of Walker, fairly proximate to Charlottesville High School and also to the K-Tech Center. So that's seen as an asset as well. Next. And then elementary swing space, and this came up earlier. So the idea that those renovations, which might occur at the elementary schools, could be achieved much more economically, much more quickly, with much less pain if an entire school is able to move out to a swing space for a year and a half while their building is under construction. So this is all kind of the handful of different site uses that we were requested to look at. Next. Before we dig into the phasing and the different locations of those uses, I'm going to go into the early childhood, the early learning center, pardon me, in a little bit of detail with you. Next. Okay, so we've just completed concept design for this, which would be the first phase of the master plan. This project for the Early Learning Center is the next major investment in Charlottesville City Schools facilities that's upcoming for our city. And the whole idea is make sure we do it in a way that allows all of the site potential to still unfold in the future. We're not doing something that cuts off some possibility. So the master plan is not something that's prescriptive saying we must do all these steps. It's something where we show possibilities, and as we complete each step, we make sure we're doing it in a way which does not, block future developments which might be desirable. Next. And just a reminder, probably everyone's familiar, but this Early Learning Center is the completion of the reconfiguration process. It's being put in place to complete the reconfiguration that was started with the Charlottesville Middle School project, which is going to bring together grades 6, 7, and 8 on the Cherry Avenue site. Elementaries will host grades K through 5, and then the preschool center will now have to be called the Charlottesville Early Learning Center. Will be the home for all of those preschool classrooms that have been spread across the 6 elementaries. And there's this idea that we're not just reconfiguring grades. As we do this, we're uplifting our facilities, and each time we put someone into a new space, we're making sure that that space is the best it can be in order to support their development, their health, teacher retention, all of those things that a good facility can do for us. Next. And early childhood is a pretty facility-intensive endeavor. Classrooms for this age group are larger than your typical elementary classroom, and a lot of that is because they're not reading yet, and their curriculum is physical. There are a lot of different materials, equipment that are needed, curriculum that cycles through for different lessons and then needs to be put into storage because they're really learning from, they're not doing paper and pencil all day. They really are learning by doing and touching and moving and building. And then they also need direct access from those classrooms to toilet rooms. That's a very big deal for logistics and also for the development of children's sense of autonomy, ability to care for themselves and do what they need to do without adult gatekeepers, taking them down the hall. Next. And we believe that it's really worth the investment to create these appropriate spaces for them because, these early years, 3 and 4 years old, it's a very consequential time for growth and learning for a young person and can really impact their trajectory moving through the rest of their academic career and their life. Next. The scale of the center that's being proposed for the Walker site is 20 classrooms. This allows a little bit of growth, but it's essentially maintaining the existing scope of services. It was given to us a charge, though, to make sure that however we do the design, we need to be able to provide for a future expansion of about 12 classrooms. And that's so that in the future, if our operational funding were made available, we could increase the size of the 3-year-old program to match the size of the 4-year-old program. And that's because a 2-year experience where you get to be there as a 3-year-old and 4-year-old is shown to have a great benefit for outcomes in preschool. Next. Okay, so back to the Walker site where this is all happening. We've got Building A labeled here. That's the main classroom building that has a cafeteria in its lower level. Next. Building B, that's the auditorium building. It also houses classrooms for visual and performing arts. There's a functional skills classroom in there as well. Next. Building C is the gymnasium to the south there. Next. Crow Pool is in that southeast corner of the site. Next. And the central admin building is up in that north corner of the site. Next. So, starting about a year from now, all of the preschool classes in Charlottesville City Schools will be taking place in Building A without much significant renovation of any kind. They're just using it as is, as a swing space, while next, the construction of the new facility occurs right next to them. So if everything stays on schedule, that means about a year of design and then a couple years of construction, and next, in fall 2028, they will start school in their new facility. And we've worked on this concept design not only to try to stay out of the way of other site uses that you'll see in a little bit, but also to try to tackle one of the major challenges of this site, which is it really lacks outdoor play and learning space at the level of the classrooms. So we worked hard to provide that amenity to the new building, and then also actually improving the case for Building A somewhat as well. So you'll see, we're entering, excuse me, the new Early Learning Center from a bus loop that's facing north there. You can see the red triangle that's pointing at the entry. So it's a front door on Gentry Road, not far from the existing Building A entry. And then there are a series of terraces. So each level of classrooms, and there are 3 levels that step all the way down to that playing field level that's kind of at the center of the site. Each of those offers every classroom in the building immediate access to outdoor learn and play space that's secured, developmentally appropriate spaces for play and learning. It's really an outdoor classroom. Next.
One quick question, would that road have to be relocated? I'm trying to think of, for Building A to the road, is enough space there?
Yeah, so there's a retaining wall involved basically in moving,
So this is gonna be like right up to the current building?
Yeah,
pretty close.
so actually, and if we go on, you'll be able to see the entry landscape a little bit. But essentially, there's a bunch of land on the site that is a hillside right now. And so we're suggesting that you cut into that hill to create part of that bus loop. The retaining wall, I think on average we said 5 or 6 feet tall. It's not a gigantic retaining wall. But it is a big site move in order to create that appropriate entry landscape at the front door, which Building A really lacks right now as it exists. And the new building, as you probably noticed, is a majority of it is going on the existing parking lot that's by Building A. So there are some big site moves involved to make this work, and yes, a good, an astute note there. So this is looking from the south at the new facility. The gym roof you can see on the lower right of the image. Building A south facade that includes that opening to the cafeteria you can see in the upper right. You see the roof terraces I mentioned. There's a central spine of site circulation through the middle there, and you can see the connector over to Building A. And that allows Building A, whoever's in there, to make use of our elevator that connects all 3 levels of the site. Again, that vertical movement across the site has been a big challenge. So trying to really heal that up with this project. And the project also creates a terrace, a roof terrace at the level of the cafeteria in Building A. If you've been in that cafeteria and stepped out, there's really not an outdoor space at the scale of that cafeteria room, and this provides that, as well as these other site connections. Next. You can see we've matched the building levels. I didn't tell Mike about it. We didn't talk ahead of time, but yeah. So we have matched the new building levels to Building A, so that they can make the most of the vertical circulation between the two of them. Next. And this is a front door shot of the new Early Learning Center with the green signage above. So we're standing with Building A is on our left. The new bus loop is to our right, and the big hillside along Gentry. The open site circulation down through the site you see in the slot there. We could pass under that connector to Building A. If we have time, I could check in if people have questions on this, or I could just blow through to the master plan.
Oh, is that the last slide?
This is the end of the concept design portion, and then I can lead you through the master plan.
Okay, we have about 15 minutes, so it's quickly. Any questions from council?
Okay. All right, and the master plan will put some of this in context too. All right, so next slide, please.
I think we all agree that it looks really nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. We've had a lot of fun with it over the past month for sure. Okay, so how does this Early Learning Center design fit into a larger plan for the Walker site? Again, here are our site uses that I described earlier. Next. Today's picture where we're using buildings A, B, and C for Walker Upper Elementary. Admin is on the north, Pro on the lower right of the image southeast. Next. Talked about the Early Learning Center already moving into Building A as a swing space. Next. And that'll be through spring of 2028. This diagram represents the new Early Learning Center that we were just looking at, opening in fall of 2028. That's a completion of what we're calling phase 1 of the master plan. Next. And then we're saying that with a year-long project of light renovation, Building B could become the home of the Lugo McGinnis Academy. And that would give them use of the gymnasium. We're proposing that they would have outdoor recreational and learning space, as you can see, kind of in an L shape. That's that light orange to the east and to the south of the building. So really that central courtyard that's currently the blacktop is dedicated to younger students, and they have their own space apart from that. Next. And then phase 3 here represents the use of Building A as that elementary swing space. And Building A has, I think, 28 classrooms on the upper level, and it's been operating as a 600 student school, so any of these elementaries that we have in the city should be able to use this in a reasonable fashion for a year or a year and a half as needed. However, you'll notice that up at the north of the site, we're not seeing the admin building anymore. We've got Early Learning Center, Lugo McGinnis. When we bring this third school to the site, we're showing that you need some additional parking for the staff. And so that north end of the site, we've taken to develop that parking. And we're putting the administrative office space that's currently there into the lower level of Building A in this scenario. And this space could last from 6 to 10 years, depending on how long it takes to get through all those renovations. So it's a long-term scenario. Next. And then finally, if it were desired, Lugo McGinnis has space to do a little bit of expansion, and ideally, you would do a kind of connector piece with an elevator. And these projects could have in different orders, but there's not great access for someone in a wheelchair to Building B right now. There's an ability to build a bit of a lobby with an elevator that can get someone from that Rose Hill parking up into the site and to the different levels that exist there. And then next. And so then in phase 5, there's that expansion we talked about of the preschool center into Building A, so that connector that we built becomes an active back and forth for the preschool center. And we finally build the central admin space so that all of the staff can come together, currently showing them in that yellow portion. They said put us last. They did. Yeah. They said schools first. But, you know, at the scale of 12 classrooms, we don't need the whole of Building A for the preschool expansion. So the built space is there, and this would give central admin its own front door facing north, adjacent to that parking that was developed in the prior phase. Next. So overall, you know, we've worked and believe that we've really shown that it's possible to accommodate multiple uses on this site. And in a sense, it's so sloped, it's almost better to have multiple small uses than to be trying to span the whole site with, you know, one institution. We have reused existing buildings, so the only building demolition that's involved in this plan is that small admin building. Every other building is maintained and reused for a meaningful purpose. We've improved site circulation, provided some vehicle loops that are much needed. We've located outdoor space for students directly outside the buildings that they are in. And we believe there are multiple off-ramps, which is a good phrase we got from the schools. None of these phases require that the next phase be built. So it's all possibilities, not necessities. And so, yeah, we're excited to have been able to work on this project with the schools. Next. And we're at questions.
So if I could, I'll just quickly jump in to just frame that, and I'm not trying to trigger anybody, but the FEI conversation that we had just a few months ago really, really caused some reimagination to be possible to happen. And that site specifically triggered a lot of, but what would we do if we got that piece of property? How could that make a difference? Losing that property, we did not lose that energy. We actually just redirected it to the Walker site. And as you see, that's where all of this has really come from. The focus has been on, we have talked about, and this community has been prepared for the idea that the Crow Pool is to be demolished. That was discussed some time ago. While we still know that a decision ultimately has to be made, it was slated for demolition. This original design called for the gymnasium and the auditorium to be demolished. And we push back into, well, what else might we be able to do based on what came out of that FEI conversation? So we're here looking at that particular slide because we were kind of given that opportunity. So I'll thank the federal government for at least triggering that part of the conversation because it really made us be a little bit more creative. And I actually appreciate the moment that it calls for us because we were able to go back to the designs and say, well, what if? What might be possible if we did this? And that's how you have what VMDO just presented. So I just wanted to point that out to you and just say, now we got to figure out how to pay for it, but at least we figured out what it could be.
Emanuel, I'll let you all go first.
All right. We'll have a chance to provide some programmatic feedback to Dr. Gurley and his team based on that. So I think this conversation is going to be more directed with what we want council to hear from us. I don't know, it's the technology in our time, but I think one slide that I just would love us to be able to go back to is what the dollar investment early results in. And I just hope that that isn't lost. I don't have to sit in your seat and figure out exactly how to fund this. You know, our job is to advocate for our schools and our students who are also your citizens. And I think paying attention to what that dollar investment equates, what did it say, $7? And anyway, so Mr. Myers, go ahead.
No, I appreciate this. I would just say this vision looks great to me, and let's go, in my mind. Sorry, Dr. Gurley, you're gonna have to wait 20 years, but maybe incentive to keep you around. No, but council colleagues, you know, I'm speaking more myself. You know, I think this is an ambitious vision here, and again, I think a lot of us want great opportunities, and I think I heard a lot of comments from you all earlier that we do need to modernize, and we're completely in agreement there. And I know, you know, if we have to go get a referendum for sales tax, and this is the vision, I would be very behind helping you all sell that, and again, walking hand in hand with you to, again, help sell to the public too. So
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all of this. Nice to see you, Maria, again. I guess I wanted to roll back a little bit when you were talking about, Mr. Freeze, the options, or I don't know if it was you or Mike, the options of whole building renovation or upgrades and the time that it would take to do that study. Was it 3 to 5 years that I heard you all?
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
So I believe when you initially presented the option of looking at just doing the minimal upgrades and continuing to do just the improvement programs per site or per school, as opposed to looking at doing a whole school upgrade or modernization. And I thought I heard one of you say that it would take 3 to 5 years to do that cost estimate study. And is that for all of the schools? And maybe it was her.
It wouldn't take us that long. I think we could, I would say year minus is more the time frame. I don't think it would take anywhere near that long to do that kind of analysis.
For each school or for
Well,
all?
no, I would say we should probably look at it holistically and kind of present, all of them as a package, and then we could choose, the sequencing based on need and whatever, school board and council is interested in.
So, and at some point, I'm assuming, Mr. Sanders and Dr. Gurley, you're looking for some guidance from school board and then council. You all are listening to us as far as which direction we would like to go, right?
Absolutely. So I think once that assessment is done, of course the funding part, will be the bigger issue. But I think we do as a school division, we will need to prioritize like what's urgent, and then make that recommendation to the city.
I agree with that. We would always want to hear the recommendation from schools, and that in itself becomes an important piece for us to then try to factor in what are the choices, what are the options. As I continue to say to council, I'm here to frame it, and then they have to tell me which way we're going to go, and then we'll do it. And I think that's really why it was important for us to make sure that this conversation happened now, leading into this retreat that they're going to have. Because they have the big ticket items to discuss, and then to really just figure out how hard are we pulling each of these levers, because each one of them has a lot of money attached to them. And it may be that we could get them all done, just in different degrees or different schedules. I think that's really what we're trying to get to. So I wouldn't say we're looking for an answer or direction just yet. It really is more about reaction to what you're seeing and hearing. And is it the right direction that you want to go in? Does it check the boxes that you had to prioritize when you made the decision to serve in this capacity?
Yeah, and I guess I'm curious, and I know that we have another CIP meeting soon, next month, I believe. But in looking at some of the work that is slated to be done, and specifically like the amount of money to upgrade HVAC systems, it's a lot of money, right? And if we're going to do that, and then still consider doing something more, or upgrading or modernizing individual schools, at what point, or what, this is a conversation obviously that we all need to continue to have. Which direction do we want to head? And I think about the middle school, state-of-the-art, beautiful building. Soon, and we're rolling into our early learning center, which I know will be state-of-the-art, as far as, and it's so important to start out with those littles. But I think our students in between those two spots deserve the same thing. And there's so much more that we can do for those students as far as state-of-the-art learning, just the quality of the educational spaces. So that's kind of where I'm leaning, is looking to tackle those buildings and not just put Band-Aids on them. Nice Band-Aids. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders and Dr. Gurley, I appreciate you bringing this to the forefront. I know, at least in my time, we have not had a substantive, serious conversation about this, and so I appreciate you bringing it forth, and look forward to speaking with my colleagues and better understanding what we would look for our students in the division. I do just want to draw some correlation here when we talk in our community about what our priorities are in the spaces of public housing and affordable housing and services and refurbishing our jail and putting money into that, this really is about how we start a conversation about education. And if we don't get that right and we don't afford our children the opportunity to learn in a safe environment with, modern facilities and teachers that are proud to be in our district, then I think that's where we get the trickle-down effect of not being able to provide those services. And so I'm happy that we're having that conversation, and hopefully one mitigates the other when we start to do better in our schools and in our facilities. So I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
So looking,
Wait, hello, I've got something to say. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, yes. Well, welcome back, everybody. I do want to say that I believe that these improvements will impact our students' learning experiences, and I'm truly excited to see the new designs come to life. That's it. Have a great day.
I think that for council, I think that looking at the time, do we have a closed session today?
Yes,
Okay.
but it's short, so
Okay.
that's your call.
So I guess we have another, maybe another 15 minutes if you want to jump.
I have just two questions. One is, you had mentioned that about half the admin staff are at CHS, while half are at Walker. And one of the things that Mr. Goddard pointed out was how big CHS is. I double checked the numbers for capacity, and CHS is pushing capacity the most out of all the schools, but yet also is big. Was the conversation ever had about moving admin to CHS since it has more space, or we need that for the high schoolers in classrooms?
There's no space to move admin to CHS. I mean, we would be moving, right now, we refer to the bottom of CHS as the annex. So we would move staff out, and that would give us a little bit of room, but there's definitely not enough space to move the entire central administration to CHS.
And that space would be able to be repurposed for capacity issues for students?
Yeah,
at
it
CHS?
would give us a little bit of room, but I always remind Mr. Sanders that it's not exactly it's not exactly what we would need to build something state of the art for our students. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then how does transportation work? If we're consolidating pre-K to one building, and are the littles good to ride the buses? Do they do that now? How do we collect them? Do we have enough bus drivers for that? How does that work, since it moves them from their neighborhoods to one central location?
So they continue to receive bus service as they do now. Now they ride the bus with their elementary peers. And we have already, based on our current number of drivers, which we still need more drivers, hiring always. But right now, what we would be looking at doing is we would need to move the preschool transportation basically onto what we call the middle school tier. We run transportation in 3 tiers. So basically a single bus driver will go out and do an elementary route, then they'll do a Walker Buford or middle route, and then they'll do a high school route. And so what we're going to need to do is move the preschool timing right now would have to go on that middle school tier. And that's the way we're seeing that come together.
And where would the middle school tier be?
So it falls in between, basically the way the buses are scheduled. It really defines the start times for the schools, but right now our elementary schools start around 7:30, the middle schools start around 8, and the high school's on 9 o'clock. And so basically we would be taking the preschool, the new early learning center would have a start time that would by necessity right now, based on our number of drivers, need to fall on that middle tier, because we do need to provide bus service.
As a former CHS student, I strongly recommend we keep CHS at 9 and no earlier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael, did you have anything quick you wanted to chime in right now?
Yeah, I appreciate when life happens, you have to keep moving on, and I appreciate that the FEI situation helped trigger these thoughts, because I do think this is a significant opportunity to seriously plan for system-wide modernization. It does still make me think the fact that UVA taking FEI, increases the cost of doing this, as well as took that property off the tax rolls when UVA already avoids paying over $20 million annually in taxes, which alone would pay for this entire plan. But that aside, I would say my reaction is still, to me, this seems like a really exciting opportunity. It would seem to make sense to plan for modernizing all the schools. I don't know if that's done on a school by school case, or if it makes more sense to do that system wide, and then we decide, which ones we prioritize. I do think it makes a lot of sense to move into doing that, with the caveat that it's probably only feasible to begin operationalizing it and funding it once the state allows us to get some additional money for school construction.
Just the obvious fact is that if we get the right to have a 1% sales tax to finance school construction, at current figures, that's about $13 million a year, and that would enable this plan to work, basically. And if it doesn't, we would have, the only way to do it would be, unless we're going to cut $13 million from other parts of the budget, is to raise taxes by effectively about 10 or 11 cents on the real estate rate, which I think is going to be politically pretty difficult lift. So we've got at least the three things we're going to be talking about in the retreat. Housing is something we've made a $10 million a year commitment to. Here we're talking about another $10+ million a year. And if we're going to do transit, that's going to be probably another $10 million a year. We don't really have actually $20 million at this point. So we're going to have some difficult issues to confront, particularly if we don't get the ability to impose that sales tax.
And I'll just chime in that I'm impressed by the work, the detail that VMDO did, that you can do one, things get kind of hairy, you don't have to, it's not dependent on the other one, the next project. So I'm really impressed with the thoughtfulness that went into it. Been trying to get some admin spaces for a long time, so it looks like if everything works out, you'll have somebody to be down the road a little bit. But really impressed with the work that was done. So thank for your partnership.
One small question, sorry, not that small actually. Are there any legal constraints about why we couldn't also build housing on top of schools? Or allow housing to be built, not necessarily.
Do you mean like at that site there, or just in general?
In general, I mean, we've got a lot of school building projects coming up. What if they were at the bottom couple floors of a tall apartment complex full of teachers and families and people?
And I think that's, not to bring FEI up again, but I'll bring it up. There was housing conversations about the FEI space. They had, it was a hotel, right? And so a conference center. And so I think how we can have that kind of conversation about how we potentially incorporate housing for our teachers as part of their benefit structure, I think that's a fair conversation to have as well.
Or just acknowledging that these are big plots of land scattered nicely throughout the city that have a lot of vertical space that is not being utilized. What does that look like, and when is the time to incorporate that thought process?
I'll just say that we have talked about it, so isn't lost on us. I'll take him off the hook on that.
I guess just following up on that point really quick, if we find that the formerly Summit, formerly Clark Nell Summit, I had it right. If that site is not working for us, maybe that's a consideration as well as housing, turning it from school to housing.
That would be nice.
I just, yeah, this is a big project. We're at the beginning of kind of the conversations with it, and I don't want to think of this in 5 years when maybe it's something that could be good from the start.
It is something I know that has come up in Alexandria. We've seen conversations about.
Do you mind talking to the microphone first?
I know that's been explored in Alexandria. We've seen with the Minnie Howard project. I will say, you know, from what I know architecturally, it will make the school construction more expensive, separating the occupancies and increasing the project size to basically the bigger you build your building, the longer it has to last in a fire so people can get out. So you end up paying for more fire resistant construction than you would for a smaller school. You know, of course, that's ignoring the cost of land, which is very significant. I do think, you know, just off the cuff with the rezoning, we basically a school needs a big site, and housing can happen on a smaller site. So I know there's the idea that so much of our land has been locked up in single family homes on sites, and I think it's pretty interesting to look at a multi-use site like that for a school, but I think we've just started to unlock all of this very low-rise development land for housing. So it makes sense to equally kind of scrutinize, are there ways to build smaller scale solutions where we're densifying at the scale of duplex, quadplex, things like that, which will be just per square foot of construction cost. Those are going to be more affordable housing projects to build than you know, the larger scale that increases the complexity.
Yes, and I think they're not mutually exclusive. Like that is all happening.
Yeah. Yep.
But and in theory, we're building the school portion, and someone else is providing dollars to build the rest of it. We are giving them access to the space, and there's some kind of land lease agreement or whatever where we are not paying for the construction of the housing. So it, you know, the added cost of, you know, extra foundation or something is maybe a shared thing. You know, I don't know how that partnership would work or how that's been done. And you said Alexandria?
I know that we looked at some studies that were going on there. I don't know if they actually achieved the mixed use there, but it was being proposed as something that was supposed to be explored on the site for a new high school facility. So it is something that people are looking at, certainly in dense areas.
Could be worth exploring here too.
We're gonna have to get ready to wrap up.
Sure, so just thank you for putting this together, to both of you and all of the folks that work for our school system in the city. We appreciate council's interest in this ongoing conversation. I think Mr. Meyer alluded to this, but to the extent that we can help in advocating to the state and leading up into November to increase state funding for our schools, we are more than happy to do so and would look forward to that work. I would just say, regardless of the outcome of the election in November, we have projects in our schools that have to happen. And so we look forward to hearing more after your retreat that's upcoming. And with that, I will call the school board portion of this meeting good.
And likewise, I think this sets us up for some
Yes.
great discussion for the 15th. And so now, will you read us in the closed session, Mike? I'm so sorry.
Jumping ahead on the closed session motion. Pursuant to section 2.2/3712 of the Virginia Code, I move that the City Council close this open meeting and convene in a closed session as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as follows. Pursuant to Virginia Code section 2.2/3711A1, for discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be appointed to the following boards and or committees: the Police Civilian Oversight Board and the Planning Commission.
So moved.
Okay, all approved, say yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back at 6:30. Thank you.